Three things: Pablo Escobar, cocaine hippos, and sterilization.
And now that I have your attention,
I know what you're hoping for, that somehow the words cocaine hippo are related to cocaine bear. And that some hippos somewhere got hold of a brick of cocaine and are modelling their lives on the crime-tastic career of Pablo Escobar and freeing the world, or bringing to the world, an excess of excitement and removing all boredom, perhaps. Close, but no 8-ball. Speaking of 8 balls, let's ask my invisible magic 8-ball what the skinny is on the situation. Invisible magic 8-ball, what do the cocaine hippos want? I'm going to shake that out of view here so that you don't get any, gifs of me making gestures that you can use online. I'm on to you. Magical invisible 8-ball says, reply hazy, try again later. Must be the cocaine. Gimmicks aside, I was struck this week by a headline that read, Pablo Escobar's multiplying cocaine hippos will be sterilised in Colombia. You can see why that caught my attention.
How's everybody doing? Woo!
Not just that they're cocaine hippos, which are not like cocaine bears, but the fact that they're multiplying. Backstory. If you're unaware of who Pablo Escobar was, he was a Colombian drug lord, the king of cocaine. Politician, mustache, kingpin. Just I am afraid of the ghost of Pablo, so I ain't saying nothing bad here about him. I am afraid of the ghost of Pablo. And he was a hero to some, the Robin Hood of the poor.
Harry,
and not such a hero to others. CIA, I think, had some issues with him. So that's Pablo Escobar, Medellin cartel. Sorry if that's offensive pronunciation to anyone. King of cocaine. That sounds like one of those names you give yourself, like when you go hiking and you try to give yourself a trail name before anyone else gets in and pretend like, oh yeah, this was given to me by someone else. I really am called the Wandering Wallbanger. And you're just hoping it'll stick and no one will notice that you gave yourself that name. These names should come naturally, out of the ether to you. They should not be something that you assign yourself. That said, it's possible that the CIA gave him the moniker of the King of Cocaine. He was at the top of the heap for a long time there. And that's why they're called the cocaine hippos. Not because they're like chocked to their gills with cocaine, but because they were owned by the aforementioned Pablo Escobar. Anyway, you know when you get a lot of money?
I'm rich, man!
Yeah, me neither. You do things like buy ostentatious things that you don't really need. Or, I don't know, set up a zoo. You get elephants and rhinos and a giraffe. And some of these watermelon crushing bricks with eyes, hippopotamus. He got 3 ladies and 1 gentleman. Pay attention to this number because we're going to circle back to that. He imported these hippos in the 80s. Imported is a strong word. I think if you bring them in illegally, is that considered importation? They had no papers, no visas, certainly no tourist visa. They just came, slid in under the radar.
I've lost the bleeps, I've lost the sweeps, and I've lost the creeps.
Which is how Pablo conducted a lot of his business, I believe, flying under radars and not really getting the requisite paperwork to conduct business legally.
Oh, that darn paperwork.
That was his whole shtick. Flashing back to Miami Vice now. The 80s. What a time to be alive.
You need me, Crockett.
And own hippos. In Colombia. And therein lies the problem. Hippopotamus are not native to Colombia.
I don't belong here.
They're from Africa. And in the 80s, when Pablo was still, kicking on, they were held within the confines of their enclosures, prisoners of society.
Society!
Now, when Pablo had his life privileges removed in a shootout in 1993, the estate where this zoo was essentially abandoned. Some of the animals were moved to other zoos. Some died. But the hippos, I don't know if they made a run for it or what happened, but they thrived in the paradise of this land where they had no natural predators, left to fend for themselves. And oh boy, did they fend.
You want to love me, just let yourself go.
They fended their brains out. You get what I'm saying? So your 3 ladies and your 1 gentleman hippo from 1993 to now went from that 4 to, wait for it, 170 hippopotamuses. Or is it hippopotami? Hippopotamus? However you look at it, that's a lot of hippopotama. In the story I read, officials predict that if left to keep fending, that number by 2035 is going to be 1,000 cocaine hippos. And that's where the word sterilization comes in. And I think that's where we're going to actually bring in the post that I wrote that was inspired by this headline and about the idea of cocaine hippos. The thing I wrote, tippity type, on my little keyboard, was called How to Sterilize a Thought Hippo. Because I started to think about how bad thoughts in your brain, negative thoughts, destructive thoughts, dark thoughts, they're like hippos breeding in the wilderness, in this paradise where they have no natural predators. They just multiply. They fend and fend and fend.
I've been really trying.
If you get what I'm saying. They just keep reproducing in your brain. They're kind of like, I don't want to say tribbles,
Aye, they're into the machinery, all right.
because that's a super old reference for Star Trek nerds. Nanites, nanobots. They just keep, well, you know how reproduction works, right?
Birds are singing, bees are trying to have sex with them.
This is not a sex ed class. Anyway, the whole purpose of the post was to set up the idea that bad thoughts, negative thoughts, thoughts of self-hatred, jealousy, all that kind of stuff, these are the thought hippos that need to be sterilized, that need to be removed from your brain. Neutralized, if you like, so that they don't, clog up your brain and start pressing all the good thoughts out through your ear holes or something. I don't know how anatomy works, but I'm pretty sure that's what hippos inside your brain would do. Maybe out your tear ducts? I'm not a doctor. If you want to protect the fragile ecosystem inside of this device that is your head, brain, space, skull with things in it, you gotta get your tranquilizer gun out, shoot them down, put them to sleep, and neutralize them, sterilize them. So to break down how I approached writing this post, I tried to correlate characteristics of actual hippos with thought hippos. And to do that, I had to learn some shit about hippopotamus. Because I don't know much about hippos, apart from, when they feed them a watermelon and they just crush it like a suitcase closing. They just crush that watermelon and it explodes. That's good TikTok right there. So, hippos, despite how placid they look just floating in the water, they're extremely dangerous. It's estimated they kill up to 500 people a year. They flip canoes like they're playing Flippy Cup. Do people still play Flippy Cup? And then when they're on land, despite the fact that they are literally a brick with eyes and short little stubby legs, they can run up to 19 miles per hour. Good luck outrunning that. When they open that big trap of theirs, they got those tusks in there. Those tusks can grow to 1 foot in length and can gouge and rip and puncture you quite handily as they're mauling your pathetic little humanoid body and sticking, their... Your skin ain't no match for those tusks. Am I getting too graphic? I mean, they're super dangerous. Did I mention they were dangerous? They're dangerous. They don't even do the cocaine, so it's just natural anger that they have. Other facts. The word hippopotamus is Greek
I don't know, it's all Greek to me.
for river horse. I don't know why I'm doing that, but that's me riding my river horse. Problem is, the river horse, because it can hold its breath for up to 5 minutes, it's probably cantering along the bottom under the water. Its body is so dense. I'm not going to call it fat, husky. It can sink to the bottom, and they just, merrily wander along the floor of the riverbed for up to 5 minutes. That's a skill. They don't sweat, but they do secrete, which is a word that I hate, secrete a substance called, well, I don't know what it's actually called, but it's been termed blood sweat.
Goes up, must come down.
Which acts kind of like a sunscreen. It is reddish in colour, hence the blood sweat. But it's not sweat. They don't sweat. I think my favourite thing that I learned about them is that they hang out in groups called bloats. Is that short for blobs that float, do you think? The groups are also called schools, or they can be called a siege or a pod. A siege is also a good one. But bloats is awesome. They're big fat traps. They're gaping maws. What's that, 90 degrees? They can open up to 150 degrees. They can be in the water with just their nostrils, eyes and ears out of the water. And I think they can close off their nostrils and their ears, just lurking. Which is why they're the perfect metaphor or analogy, or whatever you want to call them, for bad thoughts, negative thoughts, destructive thoughts. That's why I used them. Thought hippos. You've got to sterilize them. Got to get them out. I figured there'd be like many, many types of thought hippos, but I would just focus on the 3 main classifications. The first one I had was called the Nero hippo. Nero, of course, being the word for black. So the dark thoughts, man, they will get you every time. I also said they were very fiddly, which was an inside fiddle joke about Rome burning in your brain. That was a deep cut. Anyway, the Nero hippo, that's a lurker. It lurks there. You are unaware of it until it suddenly capsizes your whole life, throws you into the river, and you drown in the dark thoughts, in the negative thoughts, in the just not good self-hate, loathing thoughts. The Nero hippo, it's a bad one. The second kind I called the hungry hippo. The Triple H thought hippo. Now this thought hippo is the logic eater in your brain. People who have the Triple H in their brain, the hungry hippo, they're susceptible to false thoughts, losing touch with reality, believing things they shouldn't believe. A lot of people with Triple H thought hippos are into conspiracy theories or cults, perhaps. They just get overwhelmed with the reproduction of these Triple H thoughts that they start to lose touch with the real world. It's not a lurker, it's a floater. Like, it just blobs away happily there. Everyone can see that you got them, that your brain waters are infested with just muddle-headed ideas. I win! And just weird thoughts. I think that's where the logic issues start. Like, they're just floating around in their bloats in your stream of consciousness river, just like floating from thought to thought and never really making any connections. It eats and eats and eats. Hungry, but it never digests. So you just become full of shit. That's the Triple H hungry hippo. That really needs a laxative. And the last kind, the third classification I did, was a thought hippo that was the cocaine hippo. Directly inspired by Pablo, this one. This thought is an introduced species.
Allow myself to introduce.
It is an invasive thought hippo that pushes native thoughts out. I directly correlate this one to overthinking. The cocaine hippo is the overthinking hippo. And if left unchecked, the cocaine hippo will reproduce, and you will overthink, and it will take over and incapacitate you completely, because that's what overthinking does. Like, you are unable to make a decision or make a move because you've just got so many cocaine hippos in your head. It puts you into like this whirlpool of overthinking, a circle of just paranoia and indecision. You got to neutralise the cocaine thought hippos in your brain because they're the life crushers. Those ones. They really are super destructive. They hurt you. They hurt the people around you because of your inability to make decisions, to move forward with your life. They're just the worst. You need to go to rehab.
Shut up and get to the point!
What was the point of this whole thing, really? I guess I'm saying that you cannot neutralise a thought hippo if you cannot recognise that you have them infesting your waters. It's a post about awareness, about self-awareness, about knowing how your mind works and recognising the kind of thoughts that you have sometimes are not real thoughts, are not helpful thoughts, and that you should endeavour to unclog the water of your brain, unclog the stream, and get those hippos out of there, I guess. Upon reading my own work, it appears to be you sterilise them by, or subdue them by massaging their necks. I don't think I ever really worked it out. But sure, give it a go. I mean, just remember they've got really thick skin, so you've really got to get in there. Oh, get off! Ow! There's something to be dealt with, not destroyed by. Don't let them flip over your canoe. They do not belong in your zoo. It's your brain. You need to clean out the stalls. And now I'm mixing metaphors, but I don't really care. Get them out. Make room for positive thinking, for creative thinking or something. I don't know. You do you. And on that note, I think I'm done. I'll see you next week. Before I go, like, subscribe. If you want, I can read to you the post about getting rid of your thought hippos here. Or you can watch this video here somewhere. Like I said, you do you.